Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning to everyone. Okay, so now we are going to the second session, the second talk for this morning. Untuk pagi ni kita ada dua. So just now we have met Prof Jamal. He already shared with us on how to write a literature review, how to write problem statement, etc. Okay, so for the second session, we are grateful to have Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Hafiz bin Mamat. Okay, so he's going to share with all of us on research method. So, but before that, would be better if I can introduce a bit about Dr. Hafiz. All right, so he's a head of Nano Electronics Center, NET, Faculty of Electrical Engineering, UITM. So he has obtained his PhD in electrical engineering from UITM. And he's a recipient of Royal Chancellor's Excellence Doctoral Award and Excellent Research Award. So I think he's the right person to share with you on how to produce a good dissertation. All right, so his research interests are nanostructures, okay, synthesis, nanostructure synthesis and characterizations, thin film-based devices and sensors. So he has supervised 8 PhD students, 5 master students as main and co-SV, and currently he's supervising 9 PhD and 6 master's students as main and co-SV. Right, so there is a bit on the background of Associate Professor Dr. Hafiz Mamat. Okay, so without further any ado, so I hand over the session to Associate Professor Dr. Hafiz. So please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Afzan, for a nice introduction. So I share my screen now. Can you see my slide?
Yes, Dr. Hafiz.
Okay, so I will change to presentation mode. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning to ladies and gentlemen. So today I would like to share with you about this topic on how to find stable research methodology. Okay, first of all, I would like to show this slide. This very important relationship. So actually to start the research, actually you need to do some literature review after you get a topic from your supervisors. Or you can create the topic on your own, and then you have to start with literature review. So why we need literature review? Because we want to create the problem statement, we want to find the problem statement, and also we want to find the suitable methodology that suit our research and so on. Okay, then from this literature review, you create a few of problem statement, and then from this problem statement, you can create objective. You can formulate some objective. So from objective, then you do your research by using your own research methodology. But this must based on whatever you read from literature review. So this is also important step. And then after that, from your research methodology, you obtain several results to be analyzed. Okay, so basically in your thesis or in your proposal, you should have this component. The first one is introduction. So why we need introduction? Because we want to introduce our research problem. We also want to introduce the objective and how the objective will be achieved. Next is literature review. The second chapter should be literature review. So this subtopic, actually you need to review previous work or manuscript relating to research problem. Okay? In this case, you define, you explain, and you justify why you choose this research problem. Then your review of previous work relating to methodology. Okay? Then finally, you review a previous work relating to result, particularly reliability and so on. Okay, next will be research methodology. Okay, then you explain on how data was collected or generated. Okay, then you explain how data was analyzed, okay, in this section. And finally, you explain the methodology problems and their solution or effects. Then next chapter should be result and findings. You present your result, you interpret your result. Okay, then some of the result, some of the chapter will involve the discussion, okay, together with results. Okay, so you have a discussion and discussion section to summarize the findings, okay, normally without figures, and then you discuss the result, comparison with result in previous research, the effect of method used on data obtained, and then you ask yourself, has the research problem have been solved? Okay? To what extent has the objective been achieved, and what has been learned from the results? And you need also to ask, how can this knowledge be used, okay, in your research area, in your field, and what are the shortcomings of the research or research methodology? Okay, before we proceed, so we need to understand what is research. Okay, so research, basically, there are many definitions of research. Research is a systematic investigation into and study of material, sources, etc., in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. It is an endeavor to discover new or collate old facts, etc., by the scientific study of a subject or by a course of critical investigation. Research is also endeavor to discover answer to intellectual and practical problems through the application of scientific method, and is a systematized effort to gain new knowledge. And finally, some of researchers define research as a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information or data in order to increase our understanding of the phenomenon about which we are concerned or interested. And research basically is process to find a solution of a problem. Okay, so the key word here is a problem that you need to find from, normally we get from literature review, and after thorough study and analysis of the situational factors. And the research will provide the needed information that guides manager or researcher to make informed decision to successfully deal with the problems. And the information provided will be the result of a careful analysis of the data gathered firsthand or data that are already available. Okay, so you can do based on primary research or secondary research. And of course, the purpose of research is to discover answers, okay, based on application of scientific procedures. And we have several objectives of the research. The first one is to gain familiarity with the phenomenon or to achieve new insight into it, so-called as exploratory or formulative research, to portray accurately the characteristic of a particular individual, situation, or a group, which is a descriptive research, and then determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else, and this is called diagnostic research, to test a hypothesis of causal relationship between variables, and this is called hypothesis testing research. So there are many characteristics of good research. Okay, first, of course, it must be directed towards the solution of a problem, and it must be based upon visible experience or empirical evidence. And research demand accurate observation and description, which involve gathering new data from primary source or using existing data for a new purpose. And research activities basically characterized by a few carefully designed procedures. And we need skills to operate a machine, so on, and also to skill to carry out investigation, research related literature, and to understand and analyze the data gathered. And basically, this research is objective and logical, whereby you apply every possible test to validate the data collected and conclusion reached. And it involves the quest for answer to unsolved problems. And it requires courage because you explore new things. Okay, then it's characterized by passion and unhurried activity. That's why you're given for 1.5 years for master program and 3 years for PhD program. And research is carefully recorded and reported. So there are many styles of research. We have normally in our case, we do pure research or basic research. So we also have applied research and business research. So what is a difference between applied and basic research? Okay, for applied research, basically action research is carried out to find a solution to a real life problem requiring an action or policy decision, whereby the fundamental research or basic research is undertaken for the sake of knowledge without any intention to apply in practice. So it is undertaken out of intellectual curiosity. And these are examples of different type of research. Okay, normally for applied research, you have case study comparison, whereby for basic fundamental research, you have a correlation, prediction, you have an experiment, you have a survey questionnaire, theory construction, trend analysis. And what is basic research? Okay, fundamentally, the goal of research is to produce new knowledge, okay, which takes mainly three main forms. Okay, exploratory research, which structures and identifies new problems. Constructive research, which develops solution to a problem. And empirical research, which tests the feasibility of a solution using empirical evidence. And the research can fall into these two types, which are primary research, okay, whereby you do experiment to get the data. And then secondary research, you get the data from research work by other researchers. Okay, research is often conducted using the hourglass model. So what is hourglass model? So this you begin with a broad question and you narrow down, focus in operationalize, then you observe, you analyze the data, reach conclusion, and generalize back to the question. So what is a research methodology? Okay, so this research methodology is defined as a systematic method. So it involves the systematic methods to solve a research problem through data gathering using various techniques and providing an interpretation of data gathered and drawing conclusion about the research data. Okay, this is a process to do research. Okay, and then essentially, a research methodology is the blueprint of a research or study. So you have two terms here, methodology and also method. So methodology is the study of the methods involved in some field, endeavor, or in a problem solving. While method is a codified series of steps taken to complete a certain task or to reach a certain objective. And methodology refers to more than a simple set of methods. So it refers to a rational and a philosophical assumption that underlie a particular study. So reason behind the method that you use is basically methodology. Okay, so if we compare methodology and methods, method is a technique used in gathering evidence. And method is also practical procedure used to generate and analyze the data. But for methodology is the underlying theory and analysis of how a research does or should proceed. And methodology as a set of principles and ideas that inform the design of a research study. Therefore, methods will cover the technical process or steps taken to do research, while methodology provides the underlying reasons why certain methods are used in the process. And this figure shows the difference between research method and research methodology. So research method here is behavior and instrument used in the selection and construction of the research technique, whereby research methodology is science of understanding how research is performed methodically. So why you need research method? We want to answer two main questions. How was the data collected or generated? And how was it analyzed? And it will show the reader how you obtain your result based on your research method. So why you need to explain how you obtain your results? Because you have many methods that can affect the result. So each method will give probably different results. And it will help the reader to evaluate the validity and reliability of your results and conclusion you draw from them. And we want to make sure that your result could be reproduced. And your methodology should make clear the reason why you choose a particular method or procedure. Okay. Then the data was collected or generated in a way consistent with accepted practice in the field of study. So how you can know this step is basically you choose any manuscript that related in your area, then you study how they produce the research methodology. And the research method must be appropriate to the objective of the study. And it discusses the problems that were anticipated and explain steps taken to prevent them from occurring. And this is a research design, basically is to investigate the process of designing in all its many fields, and thus it relates to design methods in general or for a particular discipline. So a primary interpretation of design research is that it is concerned with undertaking research into the design process, while secondary interpretation will refer to undertaking research within the process of design. So the overall intention is to better understand and to improve the design process. And to do research methodology, basically we use scientific methods. So the scientific methods attempts to minimize the influence of researchers based on the outcome of an experiment. Probably before you start your research, you have your own preference for one outcome or another. And it is important that this preference not bias the result or their interpretation. Sometimes common sense and logic attempt us into believing that no test is needed. Another common mistake is to ignore or rule out data which do not support the hypothesis. But there is no single universal form of scientific methods. There are many methods we can use to tune the process to the nature of the problem and our working methods. So what is a scientific methods? So first, science refers to the body of systematic and organized knowledge, which make use of scientific method to acquire knowledge in a particular field of inquiry. And this scientific method basically is the systematic collection of the data or facts. And we can observe their theoretical treatment, experimentation, and interpretation. And scientific methods attempt to achieve a systematic interpretation of facts by experimentation, observation, and logical argument. So these three So scientific method attempts to achieve a systematic interpretation of facts by experimentation, observation, and logical arguments. from accepted postulates and a combination of these three in varying proportion. Okay, so these are basic postulates in scientific methods. First, it relies on evidence. We come from empirical evidence, and it utilizes relevant concepts. It is committed to only objective consideration. It presupposes ethical neutrality. It results into probabilistic prediction. The methodology is made known and aims at formulating scientific theories. And how to get a good research? Okay, first, we need to define our objective or purpose clearly. And we write out very detailed on our research process and research design thoroughly planned. Okay, we have a high ethical standards applied, and we reveal the limitation, adequate analysis for decision makers needs, and findings presented very clearly. So result and from the discussion, okay, you show it in clear conclusion, justified. Okay, then research experience reflected. And there are three phases of the research process. The first one is to decide what you want to do. Okay, so this normally involve the title. Okay, you decide the title for your research. And then phase number 2 is planning, how to get the data. And number 3 is undertaking or collecting the data. Okay, for number 1, okay, deciding what to research, step number 1 is to formulate a research problem. For phase number 2, planning a research study, maybe you start with conceptualizing a research design, constructing an instrument for data collection, and then you select a sample and you write a research proposal. And after you defend successfully your DRP, you can conduct the research study. Then you need to start with collecting data, and then processing and displaying data, and writing a research report, manuscript, thesis, and so on. And this process of the research, okay, so how to get the problem statement, normally we get from literature review, but some of the research is based on observation. And then from the problem statement, okay, you produce this theoretical framework whereby you identify the variables clearly. And then you generate hypotheses, and then your objective, then you make data collection, analysis, and interpretation. And then you need to ask yourself again whether your hypothesis substantiation, okay, research question, answer, so on. So in order to do research, basically the interaction with your supervisor is very important. Okay, first, maybe first step, maybe you need to need advice from your supervisors. And then after you understand a few topics, maybe you can do on your own. And supervisor normally provides the initial basic knowledge for the students, and students continue to develop new ideas on the subject. Then I think the continued regular discussion is very important to overcome research problem and to get the research scope, suitable research scope for your PhD or master program. And these are the role of supervisors and role of students. So basic for supervisors, they will determine the topic and scope, okay, confirm the research or project proposal, specify the correct literature to be read by students, provide the necessary hardware or laboratory apparatus, and Supervisor also verify whether the proposed algorithm or methodology is correct and determine the result given are enough or not. Read student thesis and give feedback to the necessary modification or correction and discussion. To conduct the discussion with students so that their research scope is achieved. And for role of students, you need to write a research or project proposal, get relevant literature on the research topic, study and formulate mathematical equation, techniques, etc. And also need to develop simulation if you involve in this research, develop hardware if relevant, and carry out experiment, and finally write your manuscript, thesis, and then proposal. And this is a 7 step of the research. We start with research question or the problem. Okay, what are you interested in? And then what do you know? What do you have know? What do you have to know about it? And then you do the background study or observation, make observation and get the background information about the problem. Then you formulate hypothesis. It should be possible to measure the hypothesis and test it. It should help answer the original question. And then from the hypothesis, you design the experiment. And then you need to ask yourself, how will you test your hypothesis and what tests will answer your question? And then you begin with data collection, test your hypothesis by executing your experiments, and you will collect and analyze the data from them. And then you will publish your findings, okay, write papers for conference and journal, write decision or thesis. Sometimes based on the conference that you attend, you get a good feedback from audience to improve your research. And this research project flow topic. First is a topic. You need to select the topic, and then literature, search and review. And you need to make notes and reference for this step. And for research is a data collection analysis, and then you go to finding and conclusion parts, and then you revise the data that you have collected, and then you submit your manuscript or thesis. Yeah, we'll skip this one because I think it's the same flow. Okay. Same with this one. Okay. Okay, for literature review. Okay, to get the ideas for your topics, particular topics, I think the background information need to be researched. Okay, the first, maybe you can use Wikipedia, okay, to know what is your subject area. Okay, then maybe you can find books and media from internet and so on to find the suitable articles, suitable manuscript for your research, and then read and evaluate what you find and cite what you find using a standard format. Okay, you can use EndNote, Mendeley, and so on to as a reference manager. So normally in academic search, we use these 3 databases, Web of Science, Scopus, and Google Scholars, and we have it in our library based on easy access database. Okay, you can access from that particular website, and you can get this database, website of Science, Scopus, and so on. And this area of expert, the popular errors that expert who who did not follow the scientific methods. So you can see from here, for instance, computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons because they not follow the scientific methods. I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers based on Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM. So it's totally wrong nowadays. Okay, so you have a few methods for your research. These are common one based on scientific method. You observe real world, and then you propose a model or theory of some real world phenomena. And then you measure and analyze above phenomena, and you validate hypothesis of the model or theory, and if possible, you repeat the process. And there are also engineering method. So you observe existing solution. Maybe you can propose a better solution. Then you build a better solution or develop better solution. You measure, analyze, and evaluate. You repeat until no further improvement are possible. Next is empirical method. Okay, in this method, you propose a model, and then you develop a statistical or other basis for the model. You apply to case studies, and then you measure and analyze, and you validate, and then repeat the process. And we also have analytical method, whereby you propose a formal theory or set of axioms. Then you develop a theory, you derive results, and then if possible, compare with empirical observation. You refine a theory if necessary. So for step number 1, to formulate research question, and this is the most important step in research. So we have, it comes from our thought, what we have now is not quite right or good enough, and we can do better. Okay, then research question define the area of interest, but it's not a declarative statement like hypothesis. So the central research question may be complemented by a few secondary questions to narrow the focus. And the research question must be capable of being confirmed or refuted. You can measure. Okay, you can measure this research problem, and the study must be feasible. This step number 2 is to for background observation, and you need to ask yourself, how has the work been done previously, and what similar work has been leading up to this point. Study the recent technology, okay, based on literature review, project, and formal discussion, and then optional realization of preliminary experiments, and then ask yourself what distinguishes previous work from what you want to do, and who or what will be impacted by your research. And you may iterate between step 2 and step 1. So number 3 is to formulate hypothesis. So basically, a scientific hypothesis states the predicted relationship amongst variables. It serves to bring clarity, specificity, and focus to a research problem, but are not essential. You can conduct valid research without constructing any hypothesis. On the other hand, you can construct as many hypotheses as appropriate. And you can state your hypothesis in declarative form, brief, and up to the point. Normally, format is something like this. Okay, if then, okay, then in thesis, one hypothesis after test become a thesis being defended. So the thesis basically hypothesis contain 2 variables, independent variables and also dependent variables. So independent variables is the one the researcher controls. It is what you as a researcher change to cause a certain effect. Whereby the dependent variables is the one you measure or observe, and it is the effect of the researcher's change. For instance, if skin cancer is related to ultraviolet light, so skin cancer is dependent variable, whereby ultraviolet light is independent variables. Then people with a high exposure to UV light will have a higher frequency of skin cancer. you want to measure the exposure of UV light and the frequency of skin cancer. If temperature affects leaf color change, then exposing the plants to low temperature will result in change in leaf color. Then for step number 4, you design your own experiments. And in this step, you will include planning in details all the steps of the experimental phase. So in engineering research, we often include the design of a prototype or system architecture. So identify the variables that will be manipulated and measured, and the research outcome must be measurable. So what needs to be controlled in order to get an unbiased answer to the research question? And you have a lot of variables and parameters in your experiments. Therefore, it's necessary not to only design a prototype system, but also the thesis validation method. So how you validate thesis after you finish it. And the plan should allow others to repeat your methods, and it should be feasible. And you need to plan intermediate milestone. Okay, step number 5 is you test your hypothesis or collecting data process. So you need to do your experiment, okay? Then you implement certain methods to get the data, and then you do pilot testing and refinement of field or laboratory work. Okay, some of the research might need to consider the ethical standards, and you need to confirm result by retesting, okay, so that your result is reliable and repeatable. For step number 6, interpret the analyze the results. What did your experiment show? Okay, so you can use a qualitative data analysis or quantitative data analysis, such as descriptive and inferential statistic clustering. And then you need to ask yourself what might weaken your confidence in the results and have a solution for it. And discussion regarding literature, okay? Research objective and research question. Have your result answer these elements. And consider next step to produce recommendation for further research. So quantitative research is basically you deal with data, and data must be in numbers, and it investigate why and how of decision making as compared to what, where, and when of quantitative research. And normally, quantitative research is a systematic scientific investigation of properties and phenomena and their relationship. So normally we use this quantitative research. And the objective of this research is basically to develop and employ mathematical models, theories, or hypotheses pertaining to natural phenomena. And the process of measurement is central to quantitative research because it provides the fundamental connection between empirical observation and mathematical expression of quantitative relationship. And we use these quantitative research in our area. While for qualitative deal with data in words, it involves in-depth understanding of human behavior and the reason that govern human behavior. And qualitative research relies on reason behind various aspects of behavior. So simply put, it investigates the why and how of decision making. And qualitative research typically rely on 4 methods for gathering information. Number 1, participation in the setting. Okay, number 2, direct observation. Number 3, in-depth interviews. And number 4, analysis of documents and materials. Then when you get your result, You need to evaluate and compare. You need to validate your result, simulation methods and tools to analyze your results. And you need to use a scientific approach in validation process and compare with similar works. They redo their work, compare with the published result, and use standard metrics. And you have a very specific research methodology section. So how to write an effective methodology section? First, you need to introduce your methods. So introduce your methods mean you introduce the methodological approach used in investigating your research problem. In one of the previous sections, your methodology approach can either be quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods. And then you establish methodological connection. And for this part, you explain the relevance of your methodological approach to the overall research design. And you have to keep in mind that the connection between your methods and your research problem should be clear. That means your methodology must be appropriate to achieve your research paper objective to address the research problem you presented. And then number 3 is introduce your instruments. So you introduce the instrument you are going to use in your data collection and explain how you are going to use them. So this tool and instrument can be your surveys, questionnaires for interviews, observation, equipments, and so on. So if your methods include tribal research or analyzing the existing data, then you need to provide background information for documents, including who the original researcher is, as well as how the data were originally created and gathered. Okay, so these are secondary research. And then discuss your analysis. So explain how you are going to analyze the result of your data gathering process. Depending on the method you use, you can use statistical analysis or explore theoretical perspective to support your explanation of observed behaviors. And you also need to provide some background information in research methodology section. So when using method that your readers may be unfamiliar with, make sure to provide background information about these methods. And discuss sampling process to explain the reason behind your sampling procedure. For example, if you are using statistics in your research, indicate why you choose this method as well as your sampling procedure. So if you are going to do interview session, okay, describe how are you going to choose the participants and how the interview will be conducted. And then you also need to address the research limitation in your research methodology section. So make sure to address possible limitation you may encounter in your research, such as practical limitation that may affect your data gathering process. If there are potential issues you anticipate to encounter in the process, indicate your reason why you still decide to use the methodology despite the risk. And this research design model proposed by Saunders et al. Basically, you have 6 elements. Start with philosophy or theories, okay, and then you come up with approach to solve the problem, and strategies, and then choice, okay, for using the methods, and then time frame, okay, and then technology and procedure used to solve the research problem. And this is what we call as research onion model. And for good thesis, okay, to have a good thesis, it should be contestable, proposing and arguable points with which people could reasonably disagree. A strong thesis is actually proactive. It takes a stand and justify the discussion you will present. And good thesis is very specific and very focused. And it proves a point without discussing everything about instead of visiting American jazz in 1930s and you argument about it. It clearly assert your own conclusion based on evidence. And note here, you must be flexible. The evidence may lead you to a conclusion you didn't think you will reach. And it is perfectly okay to change your thesis. And thesis also needs to provide a reader with a map to guide them to your work. And it anticipates and refutes the counter arguments. And it avoids wet language like it seems, because we have to show our confidence in our research. And it avoids the first person, I believe, in my opinion, and so on. And it should pass the so what and who care test. Who your most honest friend ask why he should care or respond with what everyone knows that. For instance, people should avoid driving under the influence of alcohol, will be unlikely to evoke any opposition. So with that, thank you very much. Hope you get some information to do your proposal or your thesis. Back to you, Dr. San.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Hafiz, for sharing his experience on producing a research methodology, okay, for your master's and PhD research work. All right, so I open up this session for question and answer. Jika ada soalan daripada participant, boleh bertanya, ambil peluang ni untuk tanya Dr. Hafiz. You can turn on your microphone or you can write down on the chat room. Boleh tulis dalam chat room. Kita ada masa, give you 15 minutes. Boleh Dr. Hafiz 15 minutes. Lebih pun tak apa, sebab supposedly you are going to finish at 11:30. So it's slightly earlier, so we can have longer time for question and answer. So please. Hello. Dr. Hafiz, mungkin ada soalan daripada saya, Dr. Hafiz.
Okay, boleh.
Right. Okay, so in writing the research methodology, okay, we should explain, right, the reasons why we choose a certain parameters, for example, why we choose that range of values, for example.
Yes.
Kalau kita nak, right? So in research methodology, for example, we take that those parameters, for example, from previous research, for example, after referring to previous journals. So should we, is it a good practice or it is a wrong practice if we cite in the research methodology part in our research proposal, the reference to explain our reason and justification to our method or range that we choose in our model, for example? Ataupun we have to put that in literature review?
You need to put in literature
the reference, the citation.
Yeah, you need to discuss it in literature review. But for your research methodology section, you can also cite that particular reference to support your methodology.
Right. So you just so we can cite the reference in the methodology.
Yes.
So no problem, right? So
yes,
because certain say that we cannot have any citation at all in methodology part. Is it right? Tak semestinya kan?
Tapi rasanya boleh. Tak ada masalah.
Boleh tak ada problem. Okay. Okay, so we have one question over here. Salam doktor, boleh explain more about model validation? From Amir KR. Yes.
Yang tadi ke yang methods juga?
Amir, could you please explain further ni model validation in general ataupun specific? In general lah, in general model validation okay.
Okay,
So
model
ini mungkin
validation.
awak buat simulation je Amir So normally model validation ni sort of we have a model, we develop a model, and then before we can further on to use that model for our analysis, we have to validate that model first. So make sure that the model is valid, then baru guna so mungkin tu kot ni biasanya untuk finite element ataupun modeling ni ataupun ada numerical model. If Amir can, okay, betul. Dia buat simulation kot.
Simulation. Saya actually tak pernah research based on this simulation lah. But saya rasa di beberapa tempat is we need to get the information from our manuscript yang berkaitan dengan kita punya bidang lah kan. So how they they validate the process tu. So we need to do exactly the same like what they propose ataupun what they have in their manuscript lah.
Okay. Alright. So for your information, Dr. Hafiz, I think more on experimental study, right? Developing the device. Okay. So yes, that is the answer from Dr. Hafiz. Amir, KR. So maybe if you can have further question, maybe can boleh discuss further. Alright. So but for me, mungkin yang sebab I also working on simulation. So biasanya there is a few types of model validation lah. Sometimes we have to validate that model based on by comparing with the previous study. So macam mana Dr. Hafiz bagi tahu tadi, you have to validate with exactly the same model that you are developing. Baru kita boleh nak validate kan our model. Other than that, the best way is validate by means of experimental. So that is the best way lah. So which means you have a model, and at the same time you have a experimental setup to prove that your model exactly replicate your experimental setup, the test rig that you develop. So that is my personal view lah, Dr. Hafiz. So mungkin saya just share lah sebab I also working on simulation. So there's so dia tanya model validation ni, saya pun mungkin that is the intention lah. Okay, next. Alright, Faruzin So what is the best way to prepare a good research design?
So the best way, it should support by literature. So memang kita kena tengok literature review tu, maksudnya is support by literature, maksudnya proven ataupun have been established in previous literature lah kan.
Okay. So which mean so the method is already proven based on the previous studies.
Yes, because I think for PhD and master program is supposed not to, we can do we can create new knowledge based on our experiment or research. But to create a very novel knowledge or very new knowledge is quite difficult for 3 years program. Something that you want to do in the world, you are the first who want to prove it. So it is very difficult to do. Okay. So normally for research and master program, we have a time limitation. So within time frame, you need to prove some, you need to create some, you need to solve some gap in your research area. Okay, so that's why I think we can use any methods or modified the methods that already produced by other researchers, and you can create some you can solve some gap ataupun problem statement.
Right. Okay, thanks Dr. Hafiz. Okay, from Mohamad Al-Hadi Zulkifli. All right, okay. Is trial and error method is a good approach in methodology when dealing with something new? If yes, how do we prepare a good try and error method? Meaning, is here some sort tips lah, eh? So if is it a good practice, try and error method?
I think so, because sometimes we don't know the characteristic ataupun result that you can get from methods tu kan, yang kita buat, kita modify tu. So apa yang perlu kita tahu adalah first of course basic of that kind of methods. So kita pernah buat method tu kan, sekarang ni kita nak improve the methods, mungkin modify sikit, tapi the basic of the method itself you need to understand very clearly. Okay, so barulah kita boleh try buat try and error ni. Sebab if kita tak faham the basic principle of that methods tu, mungkin tak berjaya lah, walaupun dapat result, tapi mungkin result tu tak valid kan. So the first thing, I think your methods that you want to apply tu, you need to understand the principle ataupun the mechanism lah.
Alright. Okay, so thanks Doctor. Next, siapa ni? Daripada Nur Faradila. Assalamualaikum Doctor. How about the novelty if we follow the previous method that have been done from other researcher?
Okay. So I think for PhD or master program, so the gap kan, we need to find the gap from our area lah. What have been done, what buat lagi kan. Jadi, so how to find the gap is basically you can compare with other researcher. For example, katakan let's say researcher A, dia guna methods A ni lah. And then daripada methods A tu, sebenarnya kalau kita buat research pun banyak lagi parameter yang kita boleh explore kan. So sama juga untuk yang case macam mana untuk cari novelty dan ataupun nak cari gap ni. So ada parameters yang belum lagi orang explore. So we can try that particular parameters tu based on develop method yang orang dah pakai tu. So kita boleh dapatkan the gap tu lah. So tak perlu boleh kita buat method baru, tapi bukan maksudnya masa tu adakah sesuai dengan PhD program atau master program. Okay, so sometimes kalau kita ada, kalau innovation practice, kalau benda tu adalah new project ataupun new approach, we want to develop new approach, the program tu start from master until PhD lah. So maksudnya orang yang sama dia akan start pada master sampailah PhD punya program tu benda yang sama dia develop. Jadi itu sesuai lah untuk we develop a new methods ataupun benda baru lah kan. But in our case, kalau master dalam PhD, kita baru nak start dalam PhD program ni, untuk 3 tahun tu I think it's very difficult lah to create totally new methods kan. Jadi for our case ni actually yang paling simple ataupun yang paling yang kita boleh buat lah based on comparison with other researcher tu. So kat mana dia dah explore, kat mana dia belum explore kan.
Okay, so which means there is no problem. If we follow the previous method, but we can find out what is the area that we doesn't touch by the previous researcher, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alright, tu jawapan daripada Dr. Hafiz, Nur Faradila. Okay, next. Doctor, what do you think about demonstrating research methodology or research plan in schematic flowchart?
Yes, we can do that because this is a very, dalam research methodology we need to provide kan flowchart kan. So ni pun tak ada masalah, memang kena buat lah. Actually you need to show schematic flowchart to demonstrate your research methodology.
Yeah. So it's good practice, right?
Yeah, but you need to explain it.
Yes. All right. Okay, any more question from the audience? So please take this opportunity. Dr. Hafiz ni banyak pengalaman ni. Especially for those working on experimental studies.
Yeah.
Okay, so nak tanya apa-apa daripada Dr. Hafiz.
So for methods pun actually kita boleh modify our existing methods. So modify maksudnya bukanlah change 100% kan, kita change a little bit. Tapi teori based on atau principle tu follow the original methods tu. Contohnya apa yang saya buat lah based on my experience dulu kan. So contohnya kalau siapa yang involved in fabrication atau synthesis of material, there is hydrothermal method kan, there is a hydrothermal method to produce nanomaterials. Okay, so the principle of hydrothermal method is based on thermal energy. Okay, thermal energy and also the vessel that can give a constant pressure inside that. Okay, as long as you maintain this principal mechanism, okay, you can change to another method. Contohnya, you apply instead of using hydrothermal method tu, you can apply on type vessel lah. Kan, you boleh gunakan angkat botol yang ada property yang sama dengan hydrothermal method tu. Jadi still lagi prinsipal dia menggunakan heat dan juga pressure tu untuk hasilkan nanomaterials. Tapi you ubah cara untuk kita hasilkan material tu melalui benda lain lah. Tapi prinsipal still the same lah.
Okay. Alright. So ada apa-apa soalan lagi? So kita dah 11:30. Okay, so kalau tak ada apa, thanks a lot Professor Madya, Dr. Hafiz bin Mamat, okay, for your time, sharing your experience, how to develop a research methodology. So hopefully it can give some insight, guidelines to all of you in producing a good research proposal and of course a good dissertation. Okay, sebelum tu mungkin ambil masa sekejap boleh tak Dr. Hafiz, kita ambil gambar.
Boleh.
Can you please yang sudi open up your video? Ambil sesi bergambar sekejap. Sekejap Siapa lagi? Nak join boleh? Okay. Tak ramai ni. Lagi. Okay, sekejap lagi saya share link untuk attendance. Come on. One last session.
Last session lah, Doktor?
Dah habis dah. Kita bergambar dulu. Lepas tu stop. Okay, thanks. Lagi tak? Okay, boleh lah ni ramai ni. Okay Okay, cheese. 1, 2, 3. Sekejap. Okay, sekali lagi 1, 2, 3. Once again. 1, 2, 3. Sekejap, saya check sekejap. Sekarang tak ada pula. On. Okay, okay, boleh lah ni. Okay, thank you so much. Terima kasih kepada semua yang hadir. Tunggu sekejap saya nak share link untuk attendance. Okay, kepada Dr. Hafiz, terima kasih banyak-banyak sudi meluangkan masa dengan kami hari ini untuk sesi perkongsian ya. Okay, thanks Dr. Hafiz. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, saya share link untuk attendance sini. Sekejap Okay, so please sign in your attendance before you leave. Okay, slide and record nanti. I ask Dr. Faz to share with all of you. Because ada group kan dengan Dr. Faz dengan postgraduate student. Sorry 2 kali kat situ. Saya punya internet it's not going well. Okay, so nanti akan di share dalam group postgraduate ataupun mungkin Dr. Faz akan email Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, wish you all the best pada semua. Okay, itu sahaja daripada saya dan untuk sesi pagi ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, welcome.